What's up, guys? Eric from Cross Mullen Creek here, joined by Ryan Arietta, and we are going to talk a little bit about sports-specific training today. So first and foremost, trying to get a little vein of just discussing what is good for your sport. And we're going to start off with fencing, something that maybe not a lot of people know about, but all the same, a sport that, I don't know, there's tens of thousands of people around the world that do this, so hopefully someone out there finds value. So Ryan is something of a fencing expert, so why don't you share with everyone kind of what you're all about, how long you've been doing it, all that good stuff.
So I'm Ryan. I've been fencing 15 years or so, most of that as a competitor, a good portion of that as a coach. I've competed from the local level to the international level. I've coached from the local level to the international level.
What, as far as bouts go, how many bouts do you think you have? That's the correct terminology, right?
Yeah.
How many under your belt do you think you have at this point?
Oh.
More than 1,000?
Oh, way more than 1,000. Thousands, easily thousands. Right?
What do you think is kind of your most notable accomplishment? Either beating someone or coming in a tournament placement or ranking in the world?
I think I probably got to about 400th in the world. We have these international tournaments called satellites, and they're pretty much the intro to international competition. You have satellites, and then you go to World Cups, then Grand Prix, the World Championships, Pan American Games, and then the Olympics. So I started right at the bottom there, and I've done several of those and got to about 400th in the world.
Outstanding. So what we're going to talk today is about, okay, so you have gone through all of your technical application of the sport itself, and now you're making just these incremental gains as you try and refine your expertise. What else can you do? Well, you can do strength and conditioning. Right. So Ryan, what would you say the top 3 things you need to be an excellent fencer would be as far as physical attributes?
Explosive, coordinated, and agility.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple of bullet points. So when you say explosive, what kind of things are you doing that require explosiveness?
The biggest thing in fencing is the lunge. That's kind of the trademark of the sport. So you see somebody pushing off their back leg, if you're left-handed or right-handed, and exploding with a big lunge all the way to the target when you hit your opponent. The other one there is the flesh, which you see most commonly in épée, which is my main weapon, where you're really running at your opponent explosively.
Gotcha. And then as far as agility goes, so what types of tasks are you required with demonstrating that would demonstrate agility?
Fencing is very unique in how you move. So anything that you're doing, from changing direction to hitting a person in a unique way, twisting your body, doing weird, not really biomechanically sound movements are a huge part of the sport.
And so what elements would be required just in terms of stability?
You need to be able to hold your position, even though we do get into a lot of weird positions. Coming back to your main position, your on guard position is what we call it, is very important, from making your attacks, recovering from them if they don't work. The more control you can have in your stable, your most used position, the better you can do all of your other actions.
And I'm going to jump in and add a fourth one, because this is universal to all sports domains, and that would be injury prevention. So what is a very common setback for a high-level fencer?
We have ankles injuries, shoulder injuries, rotator cuff, but the biggest one I've seen across the board, including for myself, are knee injuries.
So let's talk about this a little bit. So let's talk about the first one, explosiveness. So explosiveness is basically defined as generally, can you move from point A to point B faster than the other guy? So we want to put together some stuff that's going to allow you to do that. So one of the things you could do is banded broad jumps. So banded broad jump is essentially put together, you have a band and you are jumping through a sequence of jumps until you basically get to the terminal end. And the whole idea is that, unlike just a regular broad jump, it's going to be way easier impact on the knees. We talked about knees and that being an issue. Next one would be jumping knee tucks. So this is a bit of ab engagement, but then also a stretch reflex response in terms of just hitting the ground, making good ground contact, and jumping back up again. So quite simply, you jump, you make contact, and you try and explode directly up from that. Third one would be plyometric push ups. So doing your standard push up, but having some pop at the end. This isn't necessarily a clapping push up, because I don't want you to get a regular push up and just reach your hands up and clap, but to truly extend and get complete engagement of your shoulder, chest, and tricep so that you can get some pop. And these things are going to then translate to the, can you move from point A to point B? So does it sound like those things would be generally translating to? Okay.
Totally.
And so if you had more power and more explosiveness, would you, if I could just endow you with more power, would you be a better fencer given all the other stuff you already have?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Next is some unilateral stuff. So tell me a bit about the fencing setup. Like, how is your body arranged?
Oh man, it's so unique. So you're turned to the side, your feet are about shoulder width apart, your knees are bent, where if you were looking down, at your knee, you'd only be able to see the tip of your shoe for the front foot. For the back foot, you shouldn't see your toe at all, the toe or the tip of your shoe. So you're in a pretty deep knee bend with your arm also in a pretty unique position in front of you.
Okay. As far as the lower body goes, something immensely helpful would be doing Bulgarian squats, specifically rapid Bulgarian squats to replicate that changing of levels, that muscular endurance, and the balance required to stay active, balanced, and explosive when you're in a bout. You could do these just with your body weights or even add an outside load in order to dial in that strength, that balance, and that changing of levels that you would need during a match. As far as the midline goes, there's always benefits to be had by midline. So what type of core engagement are you looking for? It sounds like you're doing a lot of reaching, but then also maybe some retracting, maybe a bit of twisting.
Right, you're also keeping yourself upright, right? So keeping a tight core is kind of the entire process of being in your guard position. You're squeezing your core. So being upright, reaching, like you said, twisting is all part of it.
So a couple of drills that would be really great would be a firing range. And so all of these drills are meant to utilize minimal equipment. So thus far, the only thing we've used is a band, and we're gonna continue to use a band. Essentially you stand, in this case upright. We're not too worried about the lower body in this case, but a perfectly neutral midline. You have that band reached out in front of you, and you are trying to resist the rotation that band is going to direct against you so that you are perfectly straight ahead and upright, avoiding that rotation. So that's going to be step one, but step two is being able to produce some rotational force so that you can reach and lunge and use that ab system to your advantage as well. So for that, we would do lateral med ball slams. Essentially, you're producing some great rotational force, but then you also have some eccentric loading, some anti-rotational force built in so that you can move and manipulate your body and produce force during a bout. Finally, we have stability across the knee. So this is probably the least intuitive one, because the sneaky thing about what Ryan and I have talked about on the sidelines about this sport is that it seems to be super quad dominant, and all of the drills we've done here are super quad dominant. So we need to balance out that force. So in a general day, you're fencing, you have a long bout, kind of at the end of the day, where are you feeling sore or stiff or most taxed?
Ooh, that's a good question. Hips, quads, calves, generally the biggest. Shoulder to an extent if you happen to use your arm a lot. But,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you're overtaxing those quads, that's going to drive directly into that knee, produce a ton of force into that knee. So we need a corresponding force to balance by way of the hamstrings. So this is going to help as a knee stabilizer. It's also going to help to some extent to produce force so that you have additional musculature to utilize in your movement while you're fencing. So a couple of great movements that are just going to yield overall knee stability. You're going to be hamstring curls. This is just pure pulling with the hammies, just getting some good engagement, burnout. Have your legs up on a Swiss ball. Pull those heels inwards, keep the hips nice and high, and it won't take but a couple of reps before you feel those hammies really dying and screaming out at you. Next one would be single leg RDLs. This is going to require a ton of knee stability, but then also get some posterior chain engagement, get some anti-rotational stability, and really just force you to avoiding the compromise of the knee by doing this movement correctly. So you're going to be hanging out on one leg, knee is slightly flexed, and trying to reach out and make one straight line while you have a load out in front, just dangling in front of, out on your arms. Last is going to be lateral band walks. So this is going to hit the outsides of your hips, going to hit the glutes to some extent. It's going to truly stabilize across your knee and get all of that good external engagement that might otherwise be lacking in something that's super quad dominant, super forward dominant, get you some of that lateral stability so that those knees, again, can stay tight. So Ryan, if someone were to take maybe 45 minutes out of their day and kind of go through some cycles of that, do those things sound like they would be back translating to your sport?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna get right back to all of that very, very soon.
Yeah, and those are things we've been working on the sidelines, kind of getting Ryan some additional mechanics and musculature so that he can be injury resistant, be a little more explosive out on the runway. What's it called?
Strip. Or in front, the piste.
The piste.
Yeah.
The strip or the piste, so he can go out there and get beast mode and not worry about hurting himself or worrying about getting too fatigued, and just go out there and give it his best as a fencer. If you guys want to see other sports, you have questions about fencing, I can't answer questions about fencing, but Ryan certainly can, so you can throw in comments about fencing or recommend another topic that we do, and I'll find an expert in the field and we'll talk about some strength and conditioning in that sport. Thank you very much, Ryan, for sharing, and thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, hope that was useful. Thanks for watching, guys.
muscles.